Now, Toronto relies on federal money to fund key priorities such as housing and transit, and that has politicians and others concerned about how Justin Trudeau's resignation will impact municipal plans. Sarah MacMillan joins us now from City Hall. Sarah, you've been talking to councillors. What have you been hearing?
Well, Chris, this is certainly something that is being watched closely here at City Hall. I spoke with Councillor Alejandra Bravo after Justin Trudeau made his announcement yesterday, and she says when he heard he was resigning, she had a very clear first reaction, and that was, what does this mean for Toronto? As you mentioned, Chris, despite being governed by provincial legislation, the city does rely on the federal government for funding for some pretty crucial projects, and Bravo says it's essential that the federal government maintains and upholds commitments that it has made for funding. At the same time, though, the city is kind of at the mercy of whatever happens federally.
Federal governments make big policy and funding decisions. They have a lot of tools. Municipalities have to deal with the fallout. And we don't necessarily have the tools, and we definitely don't have the funding to meet the challenges that we face.
So now the focus is on building relationships with whoever is in power. So the next Liberal leader that's chosen, and then whoever ends up winning the next general election. Another councillor I spoke with yesterday, Josh Matlow, says that, the city hasn't always gotten along perfectly with the current federal government. It hasn't always been able to get as much money as it wants for projects. At the same time, though, he says there has been that feeling that at the other end of the phone, they do have at least a partner they can work with. And he says building that kind of relationship, that kind of partnership with future governments is going to be key.
Good point. All right. So, Sarah, walk us through some of those crucial projects and key priorities that the city relies on federal funding for.
Yeah, so transit is definitely one of the big ones. Just in November, the federal government announced $1.2 billion for the TTC, the majority of that going to buy new subway cars for Line 2, a pretty important transit upgrade and investment for the city. There's also housing. Just over a year ago, nearly $500 million announced through the Housing Accelerator Fund. That's over a few years to help the city build more homes. So those are a few of the key areas. I spoke with Mark Richardson with the advocacy group Housing Now TO, and he says he's certainly concerned about what shakeups in leadership in Ottawa could mean for affordable housing projects here in Toronto, noting that, stability at all three levels of government is always key for making good, efficient progress. And he said that prior to Trudeau's announcement, he actually had been feeling quite optimistic about, and hopeful about seeing good progress on projects here in Toronto.
And now the next 6 to 9 months is going to be around political engagement, education, advocacy, dealing with the campaigns, dealing with the candidates, dealing with all of that stuff, which isn't getting shovels in the ground and getting things built.
Now, Chris, he's hoping that the city will now turn to working with the recently appointed federal housing minister, Nathaniel Erskine-Smith, to try to get going on things that can be done quickly. But he definitely thinks that, the shakeup in Ottawa will certainly affect what will be done this year in the city. It's not all negative, though. We have been hearing from some people that, perhaps this next Liberal leadership race could bring some of those issues like housing front and center, especially as the Liberals look to urban centres like Toronto for support. And then also seeing some of those big issues being front and center in the next general election as well.
All right, Sarah, thank you very much.